Destruction of indigenous ways of life. For centuries, indigenous people around the world have maintained their own unique cultures, traditions, and ways of life. However, with the rise of colonialism and globalization, many of these cultures have been threatened and in some cases completely destroyed. One of the main contributing factors to this destruction has been the introduction of foreign educational systems. For many indigenous communities, the arrival of modern American and European-style education has led to the destruction of their traditional ways of life. With the introduction of this style of schooling, existing cultures are taught their ways are backward and that they need to adopt Western's ways of life. They are taught to read and write English, but also taught to be ashamed of their culture and language. They are forced to forget their traditional knowledge of how to live and survive, which has led to famine, poverty, and war. In this video, we will explore how schools have contributed to the destruction of indigenous ways of life and have indoctrinated people and their societies into wage slavery as a primary mode of survival. Number 1. Imposition of non-native language. One of the main ways that schools contribute to the destruction of indigenous culture is through the imposition of a new language, with some schools banning any conversation in the local language. In January 2016, students of Little Flower School in India were reportedly barred from having their lunch and made to stand for 90 minutes for breaking the institution's rule of speaking only in English. Those supporting school's action argued that it would help the children eventually land a better job. But this logic ignores how Indian society flourished for thousands of years through traditional Gurukul schooling. Number 2. Intentional destruction of indigenous people. Cultural genocide is a term used to describe the destruction of groups' cultural heritage and traditions. This can include practices such as forced assimilation, the destruction of cultural artifacts, and the prohibition of cultural practices and languages. Cultural genocide has been repeatedly recognized and banned in international law. In Canada, the Department of Indian Affairs of the Canadian government provided funding for the network of boarding schools known as the Indian Residential School System. The purpose of the school system was to separate indigenous children from the influence of their own culture and religion in order to assimilate them into the dominant Canadian culture. Abuse was rampant at the schools, and children were beaten for speaking their native languages. The Indian residential school system operated from 1870 until 1996, and it has left a lasting impact on native Canadian communities. While often associated with historical institutions such as the Native American and Native Canadian schooling systems, cultural genocide through schooling is an ongoing issue around the world. First world organizations continue to establish schools in foreign lands under the guise of charity and benevolence. However, these schools do little but establish an impoverished and indoctrinated working class, who believe wage slavery is their best and only choice in life, especially after devoting so many years to the pursuit of it. After going through foreign schooling, this working class lacks practical knowledge and lacks any means of survival, which makes them easy to exploit and leads them to work in the mines and labor camps of foreign companies. Number 3. Cultural mode of survival. Indigenous cultures are often closely tied to the local environment and have developed unique traditions and practices that reflect their relationship with the land. Schools, however, often prioritize Western and First World knowledge over indigenous knowledge, leading to the erosion of local cultures. According to the study published in the Journal of Anthropology, Westernization is listed as one of the major reasons for erosion of cultural values in Nigeria. The majority of the people there traditionally lived on farming and trading. However, foreign education has transformed the culture and convinced the people that it is better to work as civil servants or as company and factory workers. When asked if foreign culture was better than their own, the majority of indigenous people in the area responded, yes. Modern first world culture isn't necessarily better or easier than indigenous. Marshall Sahlin's study entitled The Original Affluent Society challenges the idea that hunter-gatherer societies were impoverished and constantly struggling to survive. It argues that hunter-gatherer societies, such as the Kong, had a relatively abundant and secure food supply, which allowed them to have ample free time. Solins also notes that the Kong had a healthy and varied diet, consisting of a wide range of wild plants and animals. His paper was supported by the research of Richard Lee, which showed that the Kong had a system of sharing and gift-giving that ensured everyone had access to food and other resources. Another study by Frank Marlowe showed Hadza people in Tanzania have chosen to maintain their traditional ways of life as hunter-gatherers, despite a large number of outside attempts at westernization and schooling. Has Western education helped poverty in Africa? Critics of Western education in Africa argue that the education system has not addressed the specific challenges faced by the African communities. For example, developing countries are reliant on agriculture, yet schools fail to teach students how to care for crops, fix farming machinery, or care for animals. Nigerian writer Chinweizu is quoted as saying, "It was miseducation which, under the mystique of modernizing me into some civilized condition, had worked to infect me with intellectual meningitis that would twist my cultural spine and rivet my admiring gaze upon Europe and the West. It was a miseducation which sought to withhold from me the memory of our true African past and to substitute instead an ignorant shame for whatever travesties Europe chose to present as the African past. It was a miseducation which sought to quarantine me from all the influences, ancient as well as contemporary, which did not emanate from or meet with the imperial approval of Western civilization." The reasoning and justification for modern first world style schooling in Africa and other developing societies today is the same as the justification given for the schooling which destroyed the Native American communities in the past. Despite hundreds of years of forced schooling for Native Americans, they are still one of the poorest ethnic groups in the United States, according to a 2018 census cited by Poverty USA. And schooling has caused and continued that poverty instead of improving it. Schooling has not helped the impoverished people across the world and has in fact perpetuated their poverty by wasting a large portion of their life and time studying topics which provide no practical use. At the same time, schooling destroys local cultures and means of survival.